My name's Marnie. I am the sales recruiting manager for Gallo. I've actually been with Gallo my entire professional career, so almost 11 years, recruited out of college, worked our way through our sales leadership development program, the program I'm now hiring for. 7 different roles in 10 years, a lot of increasing scope and responsibility. And as the sales recruiting manager, not only am I responsible for all the recruiting strategies on college campuses from New Mexico and Idaho west to the Pacific Ocean, I also manage our mentor program within our current system. We call them LDPs, Leadership Development Program Candidates. I manage our, retention and opportunity and just kind of long-term career pathing. So really cool opportunity to be in at Gallo. If you want to be internet friends, that's the QR code to my LinkedIn. If you want to just scan that and be internet friends, I'd love to expand my network as much as possible. But let's just jump on in. That's a little bit about me. Go back here. And let's talk about selling yourself in a virtual world. So we're going to start with networking, and then I'll touch on a few interview tips and tricks. So I think for me, there's 4 easy steps to stand out virtually. And this is being more than a resume, focusing on your professional appearance in the virtual world, controlling the controllables, and then same as in person, it's all about that professional follow-up there at the end. So let's break down what each of these buckets mean. So the first one is being more than a resume. And this means, yes, you may apply for a job, but how else can you get in touch with that recruiter? Don't be afraid to approach them via LinkedIn or a virtual career fair. Those steps take your name just off of a piece of paper and into a personal connection. And in the virtual world right now, I think personal connection is paramount to almost anything else. You can see a resume and your resume might be a fit, but as a recruiter, we want to get to know you as a person, not just what your resume says. So do not be afraid to approach recruiters. Even on LinkedIn, just connecting and in your little connection note, say, hey, I saw you present at Mondays at noon, and I really liked what you had to say about connecting. Looking forward to connecting. Or maybe you want to learn about an industry. Say, do you have a 10-minute window, a 15-minute window where we could do a quick informational interview? I'd love to learn more about the wine and spirits industry. And maybe if that recruiter doesn't have time, they could send you to someone else, or they might just say no. And what's the worst you're going to get? A no. So don't be afraid to get out there, approach recruiters. We are normal people and we want the human connection just as much as anyone else. So that for me is the most important way to stand out, is getting your name out there and getting a face-to-face interaction. You can use referrals to spark conversation. So maybe you know that I'm really connected to Vicky. You're like, oh, Marnie, I know, I go to Gonzaga and I was chatting with Vicky and she said Gallo might be a really great place to grow my career. And so immediately we have a connection point. We have that icebreaker moment. So anytime you can use referrals to spark conversation, it just takes it again to that personal level and gets a really, really good icebreaker across the bat. Being positive is super important. There's a lot of things that are going on in the world right now, and that's okay if you don't feel positive all the time, but especially in an interview and networking with an employer, you want to be as positive as possible. And if you, want to take maybe some opportunity, use that pro method, sandwich that con in there between 2 pros, but you want your first impression to be positive and uplifting to leave a good impression on that recruiter or that person you're connecting with. Being more than a resume is important because you have to have specific examples to back up your resume. If you're in an interview and it's on your resume, fair game to ask in the interview. If you say, hey, I'm a big sneakerhead, and then in the resume or in the interview, I'm like, hey, tell me about, what is your favorite pair of sneakers? And you're like, oh, I don't really know. So being able, if it's on your resume, it's fair game. So have specific examples to back that up, and then have your elevator pitch practiced and ready. Some of these career fairs, you might get 5 to 10 minutes with an employer, and that is not a lot of time to tell them maybe why you're the right position or right person for the job, or why you could be a really good add to the organization. So have that elevator pitch practice ready, red pen, and then different for each employer. If you're looking for sales jobs or finance jobs or marketing jobs, have a couple of different iterations of this depending on who you're talking to and depending on what you're looking for. Being more than a resume, social media is really important, especially being an alcohol beverage company. I'm going to go look at all of your social media outlets that I can find and see, are you responsible with alcohol? Because if you're not, it's very unlikely that you'll be getting a job with Gallo in the alcohol beverage industry, because not only do we sell a product that, can be construed negatively or positively, but how can you be responsible when using the product? So we look at social media, make sure it's clean and appropriate. If you don't want to worry about that, just make your profile private so nobody can see it. I'm not here to tell you what to put on your own social media. I think it's a great form of, self-expression, but as you're looking for jobs or networking, just be wary, because as employers, we definitely look for it. When it comes to LinkedIn, you want to have an up-to-date professional LinkedIn profile. It's kind of that living resume. So any certifications, great ways to quantify your resume. Make sure you put them on LinkedIn as well, and have a professional headshot. Make sure we can clearly see your face and kind of get that personal touch there, as I was mentioning earlier. Most folks have an iPhone or know somebody who has an iPhone, or Android even takes really wonderful photos. Grab a plain background, maybe a pretty bush, and go out and take yourself a very professional headshot. And that just gives that level of professionalism to your LinkedIn. Professional signatures on your email is a great way to showcase your professionalism as well. So it could just be your name, maybe your major and the year you're graduating, and then your school with an email and a phone number. So if you get me an email, if you send me an email, or if you reply to one of my emails, your contact information right there at the bottom of the email. In the professional world, we use signatures. So adopting that as a college student and then showing that professionalism when you're emailing professors or recruiters goes a really, really long way. And then again, having a professional email name. And this one I did myself, so I can speak from experience here. But first dot last name at any type of email is great. Your student email at zagmail.gonzaga, very, very professional. What you don't want to have as a recruiter, as I'm typing an email to someone, babyliciouschick4@gmail.com. Again, this is coming from personal experience here. So just as a recruiter, it's kind of fun to like see the unique individual names. But if you, as you're applying for jobs, just make sure that you have a professional email or you're using your school email, because you want to always put your best foot forward. So just take my word for it on that one. Any questions on that being more than a resume? Okay, perfect. Let's kind of focus on that professional appearance. So this first bullet point is really for that kind of one-on-one meeting. Make sure your camera is on, or if you're coming to a professional development event and you have the ability and you're in a good place for it, it's always a great idea to have your camera on. So if it's not on, I'm not dogging on you right now, but just think maybe the next time when you come to a professional event or a network or a series, it's a great way to get that face-to-face interaction with the recruiter. Even if you're just learning, you might not always be in a place to have your camera on, and that's okay. But just as you're thinking through, especially in those one-on-one meetings, career fairs, make sure your camera is on, and then make sure you're in the frame. So you are framed here. You don't want to be talking to a recruiter like this. Now you guys get to see the back of my background here. But you always want to make sure that you're in frame and you're front and center. Also watching for nonverbal communication. Maybe you're taking notes, or you have two monitors, or you're looking at a resume on your phone. So watching for that nonverbal communication. And if it is something like, hey, I hope it's okay, I'm just going to be taking notes. I'm clued into this interview. I'm clued into this program. I just will be taking notes. So watch out for that nonverbal communication. And if it's pretty obvious, like you're looking over here typing something, just shoot them a quick note or say up front, like, hey, I'm just taking notes. I hope it's okay. Appearing disinterested, that goes a lot back to that nonverbal communication. Dressing inappropriately, we're all kind of in the athleisure wear. I think they're calling it the business or the Zoom mullet, where you're dressed up nice on top and then it's party on the bottom. Like, I'm definitely wearing fluffy pink slippers right now. There's no doubt about it. And that's okay, but make sure that you're professionally dressed. And if you really want to show up, for me, when I'm coming to an interview or I'm doing my big business proposals to our vice president, I'm head to toe. I got the shoes on, I got my work pants on. That gives me better posture, and it brings me to that event more as if I were in person. So watch your professional dress and your professional background as well. Personally, I work from my master bedroom. And I make my bed and it's not that, but I don't want that to be my background when I'm connecting with vice presidents or potential candidates. So maybe you use a virtual background. Virtual backgrounds are my thing. I use this, like you saw the top of it, it's like a step and repeat because I like to talk with my hands, and then it kind of creates an office barrier. If you don't have the ability to use a virtual background or something like this, just watch for lack of distractions in the background. So I was interviewing a candidate one time. Oh, he had a great interview. It was so engaging. And he was there and he was just looking at me. But behind him, he had turned Sports Center on and it was on mute. So he couldn't see it. But what was I doing? I was catching up on the latest sports news versus being really invested in the interview. So just watch out for your background. Just be professional, or just think about it, right? Because maybe if you have a bunch of hats behind you or jerseys or posters, I'm be wondering what you're into on the side, when I'm like, oh, what sports teams do you root for? Like, go Zags. But just watch those and prevent them if you can. If not, we're all going to work together. And that's that last bullet point here. Try not to apologize for things that are out of your control. We all do it. We're just people of apology. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But right now, if my dog were to bark, there's nothing I could do about it, right? So instead of just, especially in an interview setting or in a networking setting, if your dog barks or your doorbell rings, instead of just letting it take you out of the moment and being like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed, I'm so sorry, you can say, hey, sorry about that, but turn it into a human moment. Say, work from home life, we're all doing it together. Like, we're in it, one team, one dream. So instead of being embarrassed and letting it take you out of the moment, you can turn it into a human connection moment. So I think that that's really important. I've seen a lot of candidates totally just get so blown off what they were saying because of a distraction that they couldn't control. So watch that and try not to apologize. Controlling the controllables. So I love alliterations: plan, prepare, and perform. You got to get them in the sales. So planning. Unsure of what industry you want to go into, try a bunch of things. Use the why not mentality. I didn't know I liked wine. I did not want to go into sales. And so I saw Gallo and I was like, ooh, absolutely not. No, thank you. But then the more I got to understand what the opportunity was by connecting with someone, then I realized what this long-term projection is, not just sales. So use why not and go up and have a conversation. And maybe you just might learn that they have a really cute dog and that was beneficial for you, or you might find a favorite career. So say why not and be open to new possibilities. And then do your research. Research companies on Glassdoor, look them up on LinkedIn, look them up on Google, and find out if this is a place where your values can really align and you can find a home. So that's all about the planning when you're finding a career and connecting with the recruiter. And then preparing, make sure your resume is edited. Between Molly and Vicky and all the amazing staff we even have on this call, they're there to help you succeed and work very, very hard. I know Gonzaga, they have their pro team, right? Their pro career team where their students can look at your resume and help you edit. Never at any point, especially as a Gonzaga student, will you have more resources at your fingertips than you do right now, and they're there to help you. So use them, prepare with them, practice interviews, look at your resume, go over your elevator pitch, use your resources, and then use your career fair. Like, these career fairs are amazing. Employers are here to find you. So if you're not going to a career fair, even just to make a connection, I strongly encourage you to use your resources and go to these professional events. Great that you guys are here. I absolutely love that. And then just go to the career fairs and take advantage of every opportunity you're given as a Gonzaga student. Practice, 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 and prepare. And then performing. So what I like to do for every single meeting is set a goal. And maybe you're doing an informal interview and say, okay, my goal for this meeting is to learn about the industry. My goal is to find out the long-term possibilities. My goal is to get my resume bulked up to perfection. So have a goal for every meeting, and then ask questions that revolve around that. So when you leave the meeting, you get a really great sense of accomplishment. Like, I accomplished that goal. Everybody loves accomplishing goals, but also the recruiter walks away feeling that they also helped you accomplish your goal. So both people walk out of that meeting, whether it's a recruiter or a contact or just a new networking opportunity, you both walk out feeling uplifted from the conversation just by having a little goal. So I highly recommend that. And I think it just really tends to positivity in my own life. So I like to share that with people. And then always practicing. You may not perform in an interview. It's always, you just learn from mistakes. So making sure you're performing and being productive in the moment, and then not dwelling on maybe bad things that could have happened or distractions that took you out of it, being productive and setting goals for the next meeting as well. So plan, prepare, and perform. Love the alliterations. And then when you come, you guys, I'm from Idaho, so any chance I can use a Napoleon Dynamite meme, I'm using a Napoleon Dynamite meme. But essentially what this is you maybe, like I said, use the why not mentality. And maybe you are going for a sales job, but you don't have sales experience. A lot of things cannot be taught. Self-motivation, drive, work ethic, people skills. So although you may not have sales experience or finance experience, all of your life experiences are experience. Like, let's see how many times I can say experience, but you can say, you know, I don't have sales experience, but as the president of Alpha Kappa Psi on Gonzaga's campus, I sold the team on why we should use this philanthropy or this philanthropy. So, or, you know, with my buddies, I always sell them on a recommendation, on my Amazon recommendations. And now we all have the same shirt. So you may not have direct experience for what you're applying for, but a lot of those things can't be taught. You know, I don't have sales experience, but I love to learn. I'm an extremely fast learner. I absorb things like a sponge, and I want to learn more about sales. So these are all the things that, you know, you don't have to have, but you do already have inherent that you can talk about in your interviews and in your connections with people. Follow up. Last point here to stand out. So I think I'm just going to show all these at the same time. There's good follow-up. I think there's better follow-up. And as from the recruiter standpoint, there is the best follow-up. So good follow-up is just sending the note saying, hey, thanks, great to meet you. Interviewing, hey, really appreciate your time for the interview today. But on the best side, there's a couple things that I think you can do here. The first thing, obviously, send the follow-up note and say thank you for your time. The second thing it would do would be to call out where you met them. Hey, Marnie, thanks for presenting at Gonzaga's at noon today, or Gonzaga at noon. Mondays at noon. Sorry, I was gonna get there eventually. Mondays at noon. So then it's like immediately I'm like, oh, okay, that's where we met. And so this would be what the conversation was, or this is what we were chatting about. So I know as a frame of reference where we kind of connected. Specific examples from the meeting, like, hey, I really resonated when you said use the why not mentality, or what skills can't be taught, because, you know, I'm absolutely a people person. So then it gives a personal connection and shows that you were listening and paying attention, which always makes somebody feel good when they know that they were listened to. Leaving your contact information, again, that professional email signature, attaching a resume, a one-stop shop, and then a call to action. So this is that thing that sets it to the next level is, can we set an informational interview? I would love to talk about my resume. I would love to sit down and understand what the opportunity is at Gallo. So saying thank you, where you met them, a note from the meeting, all of your contact information on the resume, and then asking a call to action. Even if it's as simple as, I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. That's a call to action, and it drives that relationship forward. So very, very well-rounded thank you note there. So key takeaways from being more than a resume, right? It was being more than a resume, focusing on your professional appearance, controlling the controllables, and following up. From there, the key takeaways for me are getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think this has been a really uncomfortable year for all of us, and I still don't feel comfortable with it, but that allows me to grow and get better every single day. It's okay to fail. Maybe you don't get the job interview. Maybe your first informational interview is a total flop. Maybe they just say no, they don't have time. That's okay. Anything new will always be challenging, and you can learn from that for the next time. Keep the why not mentality. Again, I wouldn't be where I was without saying, why not? I'll give it a shot. And now I am obviously so passionate about it. I'm in sales recruiting for what I was trying to avoid in the first place. be authentic and true to your own journey, right? This is that kind of controlling the controllables. I don't have sales experience, but this is my journey and this is where I got to where I am today. And we all want to hear your own story. So making sure you're true and authentic to your journey, and talking about it whenever you can. So those are kind of like the networking tips and tricks. Pretty similar for interviews. I'll go through it pretty briefly, but then I want to open it up to questions and kind of leave where you guys want to know more. So guys, I have bad memes just up front, but I love them. They're not great, but I love them. So the first thing is the looking at the camera specifically during interviews. Like I said, maybe your screen's over here and you have someone connecting with you, but this is not a good sight when you're trying to interview. So when you're interviewing, making sure you're looking at the camera as you're listening and absorbing, you can then look down at what the person is saying as they're talking. But when you deliver your answer by looking at the camera, it gives that feeling of eye contact that we don't always have. So making sure that you're looking at the camera while speaking, you can go back, nod, listen to what they say, and then look back at the camera. This is a very, very small, but can make a very big difference when interviewing. Preparing your surroundings, we already talked about it. We can't always control things, but if you say, hey, if you're with your roommate, say, hey, I'm in an interview today from 11 to 11:30, please be respectful. Like I'm gonna, please be quiet, or I'll let you know when I'm done. Preparing your surroundings, practicing makes perfect. Use your resources. Said it again, I'm gonna say it a billion times. It'll never get more resources right now that you have at your fingertips. So making sure you're practicing and connecting and talking is so, so, so important. Closing other programs on your computer. I have Microsoft Teams and we're always connecting throughout the team, whether it's Instant Messenger or Teams or emails. If you have those notifications, ding, 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 that's going to get really distracting really, really quickly, not just for you, but for the interviewer as well. So just like you silence your cell phone and put it away, silence the other programs on your computer. And then a fun tip, when you go back to in person, a lot of people now have Apple Watches. I'm not one of them, but your Apple Watch goes off all the time with notifications. And so what I've seen a lot is people not knowing their wrist buds, and they look down at their they look down at their watch and get pulled out of that interview. So as you're silencing your phone, also make sure to silence your Apple Watch. Fun little tip there. And then use notes. Virtually, it's now more than ever easy to use notes. And maybe you're like, okay, I know I'm going to be asked about overcoming objections or a sales experience or leadership. You can write on a little sticky note and put, leadership example, sales example, and you can have them stuck onto your computer here. So then you don't have to think about your answer. Like, oh, there's my leadership answer. There's my sales answer. Don't write it out word for word. It's very easy to tell when something is scripted, but use your notes so that you are ready to go. Maybe you have a couple of examples written down there, but why not use it when you can? Guys, more great memes here. Refrain from using headphones if possible. I know it's not always possible. Sometimes you have to use headphones depending on where you are, but I've seen a lot of interviews come through, especially with AirPods, where they don't connect. They die mid-interview. And so you're like, oh, hang on, got to pull out my AirPods and like kind of get my computer connected. So unless you know that your system is flawless and it works every time, especially in an interview, try to refrain from using headphones. Avoiding interruptions, that's pretty normal, right? This one is pretty funny. So keeping your professional profile. So a lot of interviews, you have a waiting room. And if you pop up in the waiting room and you say your nickname is McShizzle and it's you with the dog filter, super cute, right? But it's not the most professional foot forward. So on these Zoom meetings, making sure, especially as you're going into an interview, to open up your Zoom before you go to that waiting room, change your name, change your profile photo, whatever it is that is going to like put your best professional foot forward. Because somebody popped into an interview, this was 2 days ago, and it was a cat with ramen all over its head. And it was a great conversation starter, but in the professional world, you always want to go for best foot forward, like I said a couple of times. So just watch that. I have a gamer tag, which we don't need to talk about, but I use it with Zooming with my friends. I popped on, and I have my professional headshot, but I popped on with my gamer tag name with my vice president of sales. And I was mortified. And he was like, "I'm nasty." And I was like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." So just like, I can still feel the heat coming up. So just think about that as you like with your connecting and who you're connecting with, and plan ahead and just save yourself the embarrassment like I did. So, and then at the interview, follow up, follow up, follow up. All right, that was it. I'm not going to go over the sales program. If you guys want to learn more, connect with me on LinkedIn. If you want to talk about our opportunity, talk about our sales program, our 95% promote from within, all merit-based promotion, long-term leadership goal. If you guys want to hear about it, obviously I'm extremely passionate about it. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'd love, love, love to set some time to talk to you about it. So what questions do you guys have from me or for me or of me?
Well, Marnie, that was so great. So many things to talk about, and students and everyone, feel free to put questions in the chat. I wonder if we could go back to LinkedIn, Marnie. And one area I see students struggle with is that about piece. You know, how do you write that? But I wonder, would you talk a little bit about LinkedIn in general and just what mistakes you see people make on LinkedIn?
Absolutely. I think having a really strong about me is a great elevator pitch. Remember we talked about elevator pitch, having it practiced. You can kind of type out your elevator pitch and put it in there. And again, maybe you don't know what you want to do, but have it, maybe use your career center. They have some great examples of really good things to put in there, but say like, I'm eager to learn those things that can't be taught: people skills, self-motivation, work ethic. Use those as your about me, because that can show, that'll pop off from what the rest of your job experiences look like. I think a lot of the mistakes I see from LinkedIn come from an incomplete LinkedIn. First and foremost, they don't have their experiences, or under their experience, maybe they have, ice cream scooper at the chill box, and that's all that they have in there. But, in fact, that they're the closing manager and they're responsible for counting up all the money and cleaning and setting a really clean and organized workplace for the next day. Put those on LinkedIn. That takes you from an ice cream scooper to being extremely responsible, organized, and goal setting, right? So I think there's ways to talk about your experiences on LinkedIn that just stand out more than just a job title. I think the other mistake I see a lot on LinkedIn is using it as like a Twitter or a social media. For me, LinkedIn, I want to see like professional foot forward. So connecting, talking about articles, or if you do a LinkedIn learning course, posting that on there, and avoiding the, look, this cute cat with ramen on its head. That might not be the place for LinkedIn. So that's another mistake. It's great, and I love to see your personality, but I think there's other platforms for that.
Actually, that leads me to a follow-up question about how active do you want to see students being on LinkedIn? Should they be posting articles? Obviously with a good business focus, but
I think if, depending on the career you want to go into, like if you're looking to go very technical and science and it doesn't have to do with writing or engaging, like maybe having a more minimal LinkedIn is okay. But if I can get on there and see a student is doing courses, posting articles, getting involved, saying, if there's a sales academy and someone gets first place, saying, "Congrats, Bella, you deserve it," like getting involved and uplifting others, I think is really, really important. So if you want to work with people, if you want to be out and active, I think could be active on LinkedIn, and that would showcase those skills. Again, those things you can't teach, it'll showcase that by your engagement and action on LinkedIn.
Okay, great. We have a question here. Can you tell when someone is nervous in an interview? And are you sympathetic with them, or does it hurt their interview in the long run?
You can see when someone, not all the time, but sometimes you can really, really tell that someone is struggling based on nerves. And it's not hurtful to an extent. Like if you can still discuss your experiences and use specific examples, if you stumble over your words because you're a little nervous, that's fine. Like we can just tell that it's nerves. But if the nerves are overtaking you so much that you can't talk about your experiences, you can't get to those examples, that's when it would hurt you, because we want to see your examples, even over the nerves. And that's where notes are really, really helpful. So if you know you're going to be nervous going in, write little notes, think of questions, and then think of answers, and kind of just jot them down. Because if you jot them down, they're going to be back there, and that'll help you get through it. So very, very sympathetic to nervous interviewers. I was sitting in your shoes. I did the same thing. I was a ball of nerves because I wanted this so badly. But as long as you can still talk about your experiences, then most interviewers will look past the nerves. So for sure. Great question.
Yeah. And would you prefer that they just acknowledge, hey, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous, or push through, fake it till they make it kind of point?
I think if it could go both ways, like if you can just fake it till you make it and I'll never know, fine. But if it's truly affecting you so much, you're like, hey, I'm so sorry, I'm a little bit nervous, bear with me as I might stumble, that's also okay. And if you don't know the answer to something, same thing. Instead of just using words to fill time, say, hey, may I take a minute to think about it? I would rather have that, and then kind of that pregnant pause where you're thinking, than just bad example, word filling space, etc. But it's okay to say like, hey, I'm really nervous. I really want this. That's kind of fun, when someone's like, I want this so much, I'm so nervous. I don't think it's a bad thing to say it up front.
Excellent. So career fairs, you talked a little bit about that and how great career fairs are. Certainly they were very different this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what that's like from your end. You had to pivot, and what does a career fair look like from a recruiter's point of view now?
I really miss in-person career fairs. I am the type of person who just thrives in a room where you can feel that there's nerves and excitement. I just thrive off that. Like I just truly get so fired up about it. So career fairs now are definitely different, right? And from our end, it's getting that personal connection. So when I was saying being more than a resume, a lot of people just applied for the role, but then I never met them. And it was really hard for me because I want to connect with someone. So it's still a wonderful time to connect. And it's almost better in a virtual career fair for an employer, because if they don't jump to the next meeting, they can sit there quietly and take a few notes before the next student approaches the booth. So they can, like, I can connect or collect my thoughts, take some really good notes before, letting in the next student into the career fair. So I think first and foremost, it's getting out there and just doing it. Instead of scrolling on TikTok for 20 minutes, you could meet with 2 or 3 employers. Like that's pretty big, and you could gain a lot from that. So from our end, it's really nice, but I really miss the energy. I mean, my fish is great and everything, but he's no handshake at a career fair.
That's great. I haven't been to an online career fair myself yet. I've just sort of heard from the students that they've enjoyed it, and it is a little more pressure because you're one-on-one, where you don't have sort of that crowd behind you, and
for sure
that opportunity to bounce other questions off when people are asking.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, a little bit more nerve-wracking because it is one-on-one, and that just seems more like an interview than like an introduction or career fair. But it also gives you the center stage as a student. You don't have to compete with anybody else because it's just you and you alone. And so if this is something that you want to do, you can really shine for sure.
Okay. And I assume that's, you open with your elevator pitch and go from there?
Exactly. Just a quick introduction, start with your elevator pitch. I would recommend, if you do go to career fairs, do a little bit of research before just popping in and meet with an employer, because we're sitting behind a computer, a 2-minute, 3-minute search, whether it's on their LinkedIn and their work history, or going to the company website or Glassdoor. Just getting a little bit of background information. So instead of spending that 5 minutes talking about what our opportunity is, we get to connect and talk about you and how you could be a fit for it, instead of just me having to do the same spiel over and over and over and over and over again. when it could have just been done a little research online. So that is something I would say, like, get a little research so you can come really prepared, knowing what you want to ask, and have really quality conversation back and forth, not just me talking the whole time.
Okay. It's great. And I have two more questions, and they're both about mistakes. So I guess you mentioned elevator pitches. What mistakes do people make in elevator pitches?
Not having one, first and foremost.
Okay.
Like, that's the obvious one, right? So, but I think when it comes down to elevator pitches, it's not, we just don't just want to know your name, your grade, and your major. It's about looping in your experiences and what you've learned. So not just, hi, I'm Marnie, I'm a public relations major, and I'm graduating in May of 2010. It's also, I was president of Kappa Kappa Gamma, and I was on the cheerleading team. And what that taught me was a lot of hard work and time management skills. I can't wait to, start my professional career and get out and get to meet people. I thrive on human connection, and thank you for your time today. That was off the cuff, but it took obviously what I had done on campus and what I want to do in my future career. So not having an elevator pitch and then not having your experiences interlaced within that, I think is the biggest mistake I see with elevator pitches. Or saying, like, I'm an engineering student, I want to do engineering, and I'm like, this is a sales job. So watch who you're talking to as well. That's why you want to red pen it and have multiple iterations. We love engineering students. I'll totally, if you have a passion for sales, come on in. That wasn't dogging on you. We need people like you, but you know what I mean? Just know who you're talking to at the end of the day, I think.
Excellent. And then again, a mistakes question, resumes, mistakes there, and cover letters, I guess, as well.
I think a lot of that goes back to know who you're talking to. I had a student who was like, I want this job. And on their resume, it said, I'm a pre-law student. I'm going to go to law school after this. It's like, well, okay, so we're getting a little bit of contradictory information here. And so it's just kind of talking through that. But if I hadn't have met that person and I just saw their resume on Handshake or Zags Ignite, and it said law, I'm probably not going to give them the interview because I don't think that they want this. So making sure that you have that cover letter or your resume tailored to what you're applying for is really important. And then when it comes down to it, just not quantifying your resume is a huge mistake. So if you were the president of an organization, say president of Kappa Kappa Gamma, I managed 12 other executive officers in a house of 160 women. So it just takes it from being president to like, wow, she had a huge role and responsibility. Or maybe it's sales experience, like, grew my sales numbers by 25% in the month of July. So being able to quantify your resume adds that authenticity, it adds that next level of professionalism, and it really shows those hard numbers of growth or increase or management style.
That's great. And we have a question here in the chat. How should your answer to the tell me about yourself question evolve, going from a first round interview to a final round?
Very, very good question.
Yeah.
Off the bat, the first round is really, we want to know who you are, right? We want to get a feel for you as a person. So kind of giving that, this is my major and background in history. To the final round, I think you can loop in a little bit more because you've now gone through the interview process. You know what they're looking for. So at the first round, it's like, hi, I'm Marnie. I'm, public relations, yada, 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 business, etc. At the final round, you know that Gallo looks for salespeople, relationship builders, and people with a passion for leadership. So in that final tell me about yourself, you're going to lean in to those things that you know that they're looking for. So before they even ask you a question in that final interview, you've already checked 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes where you can say, I'm a leader, I managed X people, and this is what they learned from me and I learned from them. That just takes it to the next level where you can already start answering questions before they're asked. And then you just learn that through the interview process, what they're looking for. It's a great question.
That is a great question. It's one I often get about just where do I start when they say, tell me about yourself, and I always encourage students, you're not starting at the beginning of your life. You're starting at your education and things that you can do for the company going forward. Would you have any advice for them on just answering that question in the first round? Where do you start?
Yeah, I think, name, major, hometown, or that's all fine. But yeah, you don't want to say like, oh, in high school I was X, Y, and Z. So you want to keep it present. Know who you're talking to. I'm going to say that like 12 times, right? So you want to keep that, but you also want to showcase who you are and what your journey is. So you can do your professional background. This is my leadership. This is my experience. And on the side, I am super passionate about collecting sneakers, or I love music and a good jazz ensemble really fires me up like nothing else. So we want to see a little personality in there as well. You want to give the top line highlights, the important things, but give us a little color too. We want to see your own journey. I went back. I thought about something else for resumes. You were talking about, like maybe start from your collegiate career. On a resume, if this person is not familiar with MGMT 430, what that means, if you have a relevant coursework section, either write out what the coursework is, like professional sales or marketing to executives, because most of the time we don't know what management 430 is or what that means to what you've learned. So if you are going to include a relevant coursework section, make sure it's broad enough to where anybody who was looking at that resume know what that experience entailed. I have no idea what the courses are that students put on there. Personally, I don't like to see the relevant coursework. I'd rather see like your experiences outside of that. I don't encourage it, but if you do want to have it on there because you're going for a sales job and you've taken these many sales courses, just make sure you write out what the courses are.
That makes sense. We use a lot of acronyms here at Gonzaga for our different programs, and I often see those on student resumes that, it gets to be our language. We're just so used to it that we know what it means.
100%.
So,
yeah.
Well, you mentioned.
Oh, please go ahead.
You mentioned relevant coursework. I wonder, and I know it's a preference. Some people would like to see it. What about class projects?
Again, as long as you can explain that experience, for sure. Like, if you, I just did a huge case competition. It was a class project. And then the teams that won that's totally a resume builder, right? Or if you did a marketing plan for a specific company as part of a capstone course, absolutely put it on there, and you could put under like relevant, maybe not coursework, but relevant experience, and kind of talk through that in a way, as long as you explain it kind of as like a job title, because a lot of these projects that you guys do in school are mini jobs. And so you can list that as experience, just, saying what you've did, not just this is my course and this is what I did, but I was the group leader, or I was responsible for the finance plan, or I did X, Y, and Z, and this was a result. So those are absolutely things that you can put on your resume as experience, and working with a team is experience in general, right? Like you gotta have teamwork experience, being able to talk through that's really important. So I think that those are, especially if it's applicable to what you're applying for, absolutely stick it on the resume, quantify it, and stick it on there.
Yeah, good reminder to quantify it too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just want to give a moment here if anyone wants to call out a question before I close down the question part of our program. You can unmute if you want. Well, then I just want to say, Marnie, thank you so much for being here and taking us through all these great tips. So many things that we need to be thinking about. And
of course, and again, if you guys want to practice doing an interview, hit me up on LinkedIn. Like, I'm here. Let's use those resources. Let's make a connection. I'm obviously no expert, but I have, seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and in between, and I can help you, put your own best foot forward. And I know Molly, you can as well, and so can Vicky and Maureen. Like, you guys are all here as a resource. So use it, but really, really appreciate the time and letting me come and chat. We love recruiting Gonzaga students. We hired two. So if you guys know Claire Richardson or Davis Banky, we just hired them on for our program coming when they graduate. We also had a couple Gonzaga students last semester. And so we just love hiring Zags, and we're going to be back. So big fan of what you guys are doing over there in Spokane.